Maya Chen's fingers trembled as she pressed her palm against the biometric scanner outside Lincoln Branch Public Library. The ancient building, a 1912 Carnegie structure that the city's historical database marked as scheduled for demolition, groaned as the magnetic locks disengaged. Above the entrance, the original stained glass windows caught the early morning light, casting geometric patterns across the worn marble steps. The glass was original, irreplaceable, and according to the demolition notice that had arrived via her neural implant 3 weeks ago, it would all be rubble by spring. She pushed through the heavy oak doors, the familiar creak echoing through the empty main hall. Dewey, her rescue cat, materialized from between the stacks, his RFID collar pinging her implant with a cheerful good morning notification. Maya had disabled most of her neural interface's social features years ago, but she kept the animal welfare apps. Dewey deserved better than algorithms. The library smelled like old paper, lemon cleaning solution, and something else, that indefinable scent of a place where people came to transform themselves. Maya wound through the reference section, past the outdated holographic displays that flickered when the building's electrical system hiccuped, past the charging stations where people without home power cells came to juice their devices. Past the reading corner where Mrs. Park would arrive in an hour to practice English with the translation AI that Maya had jury-rigged from open-source code because the city wouldn't fund proper language learning programs. Her office was a converted storage room on the second floor. She dropped her canvas bag, actual fabric, not smart textile, onto the desk and pulled out her battered tablet. The screen was cracked across one corner, held together with actual physical tape because repair subscriptions cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She'd declined the 6 separate refinancing offers her implant had pushed to her this morning. The algorithms knew she was broke. Everyone's algorithms knew everyone's financial status now. Privacy was a luxury product, and Maya had been priced out years ago. She swiped through her morning notifications, dismissing the usual, a reminder that her vehicle's combustion engine was no longer compliant with city emissions standards, a notice that her health insurance premium was increasing because she'd skipped her mandatory quarterly wellness scan, an alert that her sister Victoria had tagged her in a social media post. She ignored the last one for a full minute before curiosity won. The post loaded slowly on her outdated connection. Victoria stood in what appeared to be a luxury residence, all smart glass walls and programmable ambient lighting, wearing something that Maya's implant immediately identified as a limited edition design. Price point hovering in the 5-figure range. The caption read, "Final dress fitting before the big day. Can't wait to officially join the Prescott family. Hashtag blessed beyond measure, hashtag power couple, hashtag legacy in the making." Maya's stomach tightened. The post had 87,000 likes already, and it had only been live for 3 hours. Victoria's follower count had exploded since she'd started dating Blake Prescott. Maya's own account, which she'd abandoned after her ex-boyfriend had publicly posted about her refusing to invest in her personal brand, had 230 followers, most of them library patrons and her parents' friends. Her implant pinged. Incoming call from Victoria. Maya stared at the notification, watching the connection request pulse in her peripheral vision. She could decline, send it to voicemail, pretend the library's old building interfered with signals. Instead, she accepted. Victoria's face materialized in a small holographic projection above Maya's desk, the image quality so crisp that Maya could see the individual threads in her sister's designer top. Maya. Finally. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I was commuting. Maya didn't mention that her commute was 15 minutes and that she'd been ignoring Victoria's calls for the past week, right? Victoria's smile was bright, practiced. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet for lunch? There's this amazing new place in the Platinum District, fully automated service, molecular gastronomy, the whole experience. I'll send you the coordinates. Maya glanced at her calendar, which was still a physical paper planner because the digital scheduling apps required subscriptions she couldn't afford. I have a budget meeting with the city council liaison at noon, cancel it. Victoria's tone was light, but there was steel underneath. This is important. Family important, the word hung between them, loaded with implications. Maya had been on the receiving end of family important conversations before. The time Victoria had suggested Maya consider transitioning to private sector work because the library job wasn't a real career. The time their mother had gently mentioned that maybe Maya should think about investing in appearance optimization treatments because first impressions matter in modern society. The time their father had offered to co-sign a loan for Maya to get a newer vehicle because people judge you by what you drive now. I can do 130, Maya said. But not the Platinum District. There's a Vietnamese place near the library that, Maya. Victoria's hologram leaned forward. Please. Just this once, meet me on my turf. I promise it'll be worth it. Something in her sister's voice made Maya pause. Not the brightness or the social media polish, but something underneath. A tremor. Fear, maybe, or desperation. Fine. Send me the location. Victoria's smile returned, full wattage. Perfect. And Maya? Wear something nice. The restaurant has a dress code. The call ended. Maya sat in her converted storage room office, surrounded by actual paper books and outdated technology, and pulled up her closet inventory on her tablet. She didn't have anything that would meet a Platinum District dress code. The smartest piece of clothing she owned was a 5-year-old blazer with a broken climate control function. Her implant pinged again. This time it was a calendar alert for the city council meeting, the one she'd just agreed to cancel. The meeting was about Lincoln Branch's closure. The developer buying the building, some subsidiary of a larger real estate conglomerate, had already been approved. This meeting was a formality, a chance for Maya to make a statement that would be recorded in the public record and then promptly ignored. She cancelled the meeting. By 1:15, Maya was standing outside Elevation, a restaurant that existed entirely on the 90th floor of a Platinum District tower. The building's AI greeted her through her neural implant, its voice smooth and genderless. Welcome to Elevation. Please proceed to the biometric verification station. Maya stepped up to the scanner, which analyzed her retina, facial structure, and probably her credit score in the 3 seconds it took to process her entry. The AI paused. She could feel it, the slight delay that meant the system was flagging something. Her outdated implant, maybe, or her low social credit score, or the fact that her clothing didn't register on any luxury brand database. You are registered as a guest of Victoria Chin Prescott. Please proceed to the express elevator, Chin Prescott. When had Victoria added Prescott to her name? They weren't even married yet. The elevator was a transparent tube that shot up the building's exterior. Maya's stomach dropped as the city fell away beneath her, the older neighborhood shrinking into a patchwork of outdated infrastructure and last-generation construction. From up here, she could see the clear demarcation where the city's wealth began. Below the 50th floor, buildings were static, solid, made of concrete and glass. Above the 50th floor, everything was smart material and programmable surfaces, buildings that could reconfigure themselves, walls that were actually screens, architecture that responded to its inhabitants' moods and needs. The elevator opened directly into the restaurant. Maya stepped out into a space that didn't look like a restaurant at all. It looked like an art installation. The floor was transparent, reinforced glass showing the 90th floor drop below. The walls were living projections, currently displaying what appeared to be a rainforest canopy, complete with bird calls and the rustle of leaves. Tables floated on magnetic platforms, rising and falling slowly like breathing. A host materialized, human, not hologram, which probably meant this place charged extra for actual human service. Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen Prescott is waiting. Maya followed the host through the floating tables. Every person she passed was wearing smart textiles that shifted color and pattern, jewelry that doubled as communication devices, the kind of casual wealth that Maya had only seen in advertising algorithms. She felt like a glitch in the system, her static clothing and cracked tablet marking her as someone who didn't belong. Victoria sat at a table near the window, the city sprawling beneath her. She stood as Maya approached, her movements fluid, and pulled Maya into a hug that felt rehearsed. Her perfume was something complex and probably AI designed to maximize positive neural responses. You made it. Victoria's smile was radiant as she gestured for Maya to sit. I already ordered for us. The chef here is incredible, 3 Michelin stars, and the waiting list is usually 6 months, but Blake has connections. Maya settled into the chair, which immediately adjusted to her body shape and temperature preferences. It was unsettling, being anticipated by furniture. So. Victoria folded her hands on the table. Her engagement ring, a massive stone that Maya's implant identified as a rare earth diamond, lab-grown, price point in the six figures, caught the light. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." Here it was. Maya had known this was coming from the moment Victoria called. "The thing is, Blake's family is incredibly traditional. Old money, you know? They have certain expectations about how things should look." Victoria wasn't meeting Maya's eyes. "And the wedding is going to be covered by several major media platforms. We're talking live streams, immersive VR experiences, the whole thing. It's not just a wedding, it's a brand partnership. Blake's family has legacy considerations, Vic." Maya kept her voice level. "Just say it." Victoria finally looked at her. "The ceremony itself is going to be intimate. Immediate family only. Blake's parents, his sister, his half-brother James, even though they barely speak. We're doing a separate celebration the day after for extended family and friends. You and Mom and Dad are invited to that, of course." The words landed like physical blows. Maya felt them hit, felt the impact, but there was also a strange distant quality to the moment, as if she were watching it happen to someone else. "You're uninviting us from your wedding. It's not like that." Victoria reached across the table. But Maya pulled her hands back. "It's just the ceremony. You'll still be part of the celebration. You'll still be there for the important parts, the important parts." Maya heard her own voice, flat and cold. "You mean the parts where we're not visible in the media coverage?" "Maya, please try to understand. Blake's ex-girlfriend was an actual supermodel. His mother went to finishing school in Switzerland. His social circle includes politicians, tech CEOs, people with billions in assets. Every single person at that wedding will be analyzing every detail, judging whether I belong there." Victoria's voice was rising. "I can't have distractions." Distractions. The word tasted bitter. "You mean your family? You drive a car that still uses fossil fuel. Your clothes don't have any smart functions. Dad still talks about his postal route like delivering physical mail was some kind of noble calling instead of an obsolete job that automation replaced. Mom brings reusable containers to restaurants. I love you, I do, but you don't." Victoria stopped, seemed to struggle for words. "You don't perform well for algorithms." Maya stood. The chair tried to adjust to keep her comfortable, and she felt a flash of rage at the assumption that she could be managed, optimized, adjusted. "We won't pretend to be something we're not so you can feel better about pretending to be something you're not. This is the biggest day of my life, and you're making it about you." Maya looked at her sister, her beautiful, desperate, terrified sister, and felt something crack inside her chest. "No, Vic. You already did that." She left. Behind her, she heard Victoria say something else, but Maya had already disabled her implant's audio input. She didn't want to hear it. Didn't want the algorithms to record it, didn't want the memory stored in some cloud server where it could be analyzed and monetized and served back to her as targeted advertising. The elevator ride down felt longer. Through the transparent walls, Maya watched the city reassemble itself around her, the gleaming towers giving way to older construction. The smart surfaces replaced by static materials, until finally she was back at ground level where people still walked on actual sidewalks and buildings didn't respond to their occupants' emotions. Her parents lived in the same house where Maya and Victoria had grown up, a modest structure in a neighborhood that had resisted gentrification mostly because the infrastructure was too outdated to support modern smart home systems. The house didn't respond when Maya approached. She had to use an actual physical key. Her father was in the garage, doing something with old tools that probably didn't even have digital components. Robert Chen had worked for the Postal Service for 35 years. Back when mail was still physical objects that humans transported and delivered. He'd retired 3 years ago when the service finally completed its transition to full automation. Now he volunteered with a meal delivery program for elderly people who couldn't navigate food ordering apps. Maya He looked up, smiled, then saw her face. What happened? Her mother emerged from the house, still wearing the medical scrubs from her volunteer shift at the community health clinic. Diane Chen had been a nurse for 40 years before the hospital system replaced most human nurses with AI-assisted medical drones. She'd taken early retirement and now spent her time providing basic healthcare to people who couldn't afford subscription medical services. Maya told them. Watched her mother's face crumble, watched her father's hands tighten around the obsolete wrench he was holding. When she finished, the silence in the garage felt heavy enough to collapse. Maybe it's better this way. Her mother's voice was small. We'd probably embarrass her, 35 years. Her father's voice was rough. 35 years I delivered mail in sun, rain, snow. Saved every extra dollar so both my girls could go to college without debt. Turned down 3 promotions because they would have meant moving you girls away from your friends, your schools. And now we're not good enough to watch one of them get married. This is insane. Maya felt anger rising. We're just going to accept this. What choice do we have? Her mother was crying now, trying to hide it. Make a scene? Prove we're exactly what she's afraid of. She's ashamed of us. Her father set down the wrench. You can't argue someone out of shame. Maya sat with them in that garage full of obsolete tools and outdated technology, surrounded by the artifacts of lives spent in service to others, and felt something harden inside her. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Something that would last longer than anger. Her implant pinged. Message from Victoria. Maya almost deleted it without reading, then stopped. Olive Branch, the message read. Blake's mother wants to meet you all properly. Garden party at the estate this Saturday, 2 weeks before the wedding. Please come. Please wear something nice. These people are important. Please don't embarrass me. Maya stared at the message. Read it 3 times. Heard the desperation underneath the words, and the assumption that her family would comply, would perform, would shrink themselves to fit into Victoria's new world. We should go, she said finally. Her parents looked at her. We should go, Maya repeated. We're going to hold our heads high, be exactly who we are, and let her see what she's throwing away. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange fugue state. Maya went to work, taught her literacy classes, helped Mrs. Park with her English lessons, showed Jose how to use the library's ancient 3D printer to make a toy dinosaur. She attended a city council meeting about Lincoln Branch's closure and sat in the public comments section while officials droned on about optimal resource allocation and infrastructure modernization. When it was her turn to speak, she stood and said her piece about community impact and historical preservation, and watched the council members' eyes glaze over as their implants fed them more important notifications. The developer buying the building was a subsidiary called Prescott Properties Urban Development. Maya noticed the name and felt the coincidence like a punch. Of course Blake's family was involved. Of course, she filed petitions, organized community meetings, rallied her library patrons to submit public comments. She knew it was futile. The algorithms had already decided. The data showed that luxury condominiums generated more tax revenue than a public library. The numbers didn't care about literacy rates or community cohesion or the fact that her programs served 10,000 people annually. Her personal life was a wasteland. She hadn't dated seriously in 3 years, not since her ex, a corporate lawyer with a 7-figure salary and a social credit score in the top percentile, had sat her down and explained that he couldn't be with someone who refused to invest in their personal brand. He'd actually used those words. Personal brand. As if Maya were a product that wasn't selling well. Meanwhile, Victoria's social media presence exploded. Dress fittings, cake tastings, venue tours, pre-wedding spa days with Blake's sister and mother. Every post perfectly composed, perfectly filtered, perfectly calculated to generate maximum engagement. Maya had stopped checking, but her implant kept pushing notifications anyway. The algorithms knew they were sisters. The algorithms thought Maya would want to see her sister's happiness. The night before the garden party, Maya stood in her bedroom and stared at her closet. She owned 3 dresses. One was a bridesmaid dress from a college friend's wedding. too formal and the wrong season. One was a casual sundress she'd bought on sale 5 years ago, faded and showing its age. The third was a work dress, practical and forgettable. She chose the sundress. It was the most honest thing she owned. Her grandmother's pearl earrings were in a small wooden box on her dresser. Real pearls, the kind that came from actual oysters before pearl cultivation became fully automated and AI optimized. Her grandmother had worn them on her own wedding day, and her mother's wedding day, and had given them to Maya before she died. For when you need to remember who you are, she'd said. Maya put them on. Looked at herself in the mirror, exhausted, underdressed, dreading tomorrow. But there was something in her eyes. Steel. Determination. The knowledge that she had nothing left to lose. Her implant pinged. Message from an unknown sender. She almost deleted it, then saw the subject line, Lincoln Branch Development Proposal. She opened it. The message was from someone named James Ashford. Ms. Chen, it read. I understand you're fighting to save the Lincoln Branch Library. I'm the CEO of Ashford Impact Ventures. We fund community development projects that prioritize social good over profit margins. I'd like to discuss options for preserving the building. Are you available to meet? Maya stared at the message. Read it 3 times. Checked the sender's credentials. They looked legitimate, but anyone could fake digital credentials. Her implant's AI assistant offered to verify the sender's identity for a small subscription fee. She declined. She started typing a response, then stopped. Tomorrow was the garden party. Tomorrow she would walk into her sister's new world and endure whatever humiliation Victoria had lined up. Tomorrow she would see the full extent of the life her sister was choosing, the people she was choosing to be with, the family she was choosing to prioritize, and then, maybe, after tomorrow, Maya would email this James Ashford person and see if miracles still existed in a world run by algorithms. She deleted the draft response. Closed her tablet. Tomorrow first. Then everything else. Maya Chen's autonomous vehicle, a decade-old model that still required manual override and didn't integrate with the city's smart traffic grid, hummed to a stop outside the Prescott estate. The property sprawled across what had once been 3 separate lots in the city's most exclusive enclave, where property values were calculated not just in currency but in social algorithms that measured influence, connections, and hereditary wealth. The estate's perimeter defense system had already scanned Maya's vehicle, cross-referenced her identity against the guest list, and assigned her a parking designation in what her neural implant's navigation overlay helpfully labeled as Tier 3 guest parking, the section farthest from the main house. Where the service vehicles and lower priority attendees were directed, Maya's father sat rigid in the passenger seat, his hands smoothing the fabric of his tie for the 4th time since they'd entered the wealthy district. Robert Chen had purchased the tie specifically for this occasion, and Maya knew without asking that he'd spent more on it than he usually spent on clothes in 6 months. Her mother, Diane, occupied the back seat with the careful stillness of someone trying to take up as little space as possible, her hands folded around a purse that was nice but unmistakably not from any luxury brand database. We've got nothing to be ashamed of, Maya said, engaging the manual parking sequence because the automated system kept trying to reroute them to an even more distant lot. Remember that, her father made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been something else entirely. Through the vehicle's windows, they could see the estate proper, a sprawling compound of smart glass and programmable architecture that shifted its appearance based on the time of day and the preferences of its inhabitants. Currently, it displayed a classical facade, all white columns and marble surfaces that probably weren't actually marble but rather some advanced composite material that could reconfigure itself on demand. Valets moved among the arriving vehicles with practiced efficiency, their uniforms embedded with service industry identification chips that Maya's implant automatically categorized and filed away. Tesla luxury sedans and Mercedes autonomous cruisers dominated the circular drive, each one worth more than Maya's annual salary, each one seamlessly integrated with the city's premium infrastructure networks. Maya's vehicle, with its outdated combustion hybrid engine and manual steering column, looked like an artifact from a museum. They exited into air that was temperature-controlled by the estate's atmospheric management system, perfectly calibrated to that narrow range between cool and warm that wealthy people apparently found most agreeable. Maya linked arms with both her parents, felt her mother's slight tremor, her father's too firm grip, and led them toward the garden party that was already in full swing beyond the main house. The party occupied what must have been 2 acres of manicured grounds, every plant selected and arranged by algorithms that optimized for visual appeal, seasonal appropriateness, and social media photogenic qualities. A string quartet played near a fountain that cycled through different water display patterns. Champagne fountains, actual fountains dispensing what Maya's implant identified as bottles costing more than her monthly rent, anchored several food stations where servers offered hors d'oeuvres on smart plates that probably cost more than the food itself. Easily 150 guests circulated through the space, and Maya's implant helpfully began cataloging them without her permission, feeding her data about net worth, social credit scores, professional achievements, and relationship networks. She'd disabled most of her implant's social features years ago, but some functions were mandatory, baked into the city's infrastructure in ways that made opting out effectively impossible. The crowd represented a concentrated mass of wealth and influence that her implant's algorithms could barely process: tech executives whose companies shaped global markets, politicians whose decisions affected millions, celebrities whose personal brands generated more revenue than small nations. Maya spotted her sister immediately. Victoria stood near the estate's main terrace, positioned perfectly to greet arriving guests, wearing something that Maya's implant instantly identified as a limited edition design from a fashion house that didn't even advertise to people in Maya's economic bracket. Victoria had always been beautiful, but now she was polished to an algorithmic perfection, her hair precisely styled, her makeup optimized for both human observers and camera systems, her posture suggesting the kind of finishing school training that cost more than most people's cars. Before Maya could decide whether to approach or delay the inevitable, a woman materialized in front of them with the kind of precise timing that suggested she'd been monitoring their arrival through the estate's security systems. "You must be Victoria's family." Constance Prescott's smile was perfectly calibrated, warm enough to suggest welcome, distant enough to establish hierarchy. She wore a designer pantsuit that probably cost more than Maya's vehicle, and her neural implant was clearly a premium model, the kind that interfaced seamlessly with every smart system in the environment. "How wonderful to finally meet you. Victoria speaks of you so fondly." The pause before fondly was deliberate, a microsecond gap that turned the word into something else entirely. Maya felt her mother's grip tighten on her arm. "Mrs. Prescott," Maya said, because someone had to speak. "Thank you for having us, of course." "Of course." Constance air-kissed each of them in turn, a gesture that involved no actual physical contact, and Maya wondered if wealthy people practiced this maneuver or if it came naturally when you reached a certain tax bracket. "Victoria has been so excited about today. Please, help yourselves to refreshments. The champagne is quite good, imported from a biodynamic vineyard in New Zealand that uses AI-optimized growing conditions." She was already looking past them, her attention redirected by whatever priority notifications her implant was feeding her, and then she was gone, gliding toward a cluster of guests whose combined net worth probably exceeded small nations' GDP. "Well," Robert said quietly. "That was warm." Blake Prescott appeared next, with Victoria attached to his side like a decorative accessory. Blake was handsome in the generic way of wealthy men: perfect teeth, expensive haircut, clothes that were casual in the way that only very expensive casual clothes could be. His neural implant was top tier, probably integrated with cognitive enhancement features and real-time data analytics that fed him information about everyone he encountered. Maya's own outdated implant struggled to interface with his, resulting in a choppy data exchange that left her feeling like she was communicating through static. "The famous family." Blake's voice was loud enough that several nearby guests turned to look. "Victoria's told me all about you. Robert, Postal Service, right? I've always said government pensions are the real American success story, guaranteed income in retirement." Smart play, the words were complimentary. The tone was something else. Maya watched her father's face, saw him recognize the condescension and choose to ignore it, saw the slight slump in his shoulders that meant he was accepting this as the price of being here. "Blake," Robert said simply, extending his hand for a physical handshake that seemed to surprise Blake slightly, as if he'd forgotten people still did that. "And you were a nurse?" Blake turned to Diane, his smile never wavering. "My mother does charity work with the hospital foundation." "Maybe you've met. I worked in the emergency department," Diane said quietly. "We didn't interact much with the foundation side." "Ah, right. Different worlds." Blake laughed as if he'd said something clever, and Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. "Maya works at the library. She's always been the big reader in the family." He said library the way someone might say quaint hobby or adorable affectation. "Public library or university?" Blake asked, and Maya knew he knew the answer, knew he was asking specifically, so she would have to say it in front of the guests who were now openly listening. "Public." "Lincoln Branch." Blake's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "Lincoln Branch. Why does that sound familiar?" "Let's get you all some drinks," Victoria interjected, her voice bright with forced cheer, and she began steering them away from Blake and the small crowd that had gathered, her fingers digging into Maya's arm with enough pressure to leave marks. They moved through the party, and Maya watched her family being processed by the gathering's social algorithms. The pattern repeated with variations: brief introductions, polite questions that were really assessments, conversations that established exactly where Maya's family existed in the hierarchy and then moved on. Victoria's bridesmaids, a cluster of women in coordinated designer sundresses, maintained a position near enough to observe but far enough to demonstrate their distance. Their voices carried with the kind of calculated projection that suggested they knew exactly who could hear them. "I mean, it's sweet she's including them." Very egalitarian. Blake's being such a good sport about the whole thing. "The wedding photos will be stunning though. Thank God they're not in those." A society photographer circulated through the party, her camera augmented with AI composition assistance and real-time beauty filtering. She photographed Maya's family once, a single obligatory shot, and then spent 20 minutes on Blake's side of the gathering, capturing the Prescotts and their equally wealthy friends from dozens of angles, creating content that would be algorithmically optimized and distributed across premium social networks. An older man approached Robert, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd had too much champagne but was used to functioning while intoxicated. Maya's implant identified him as a real estate developer, net worth in the hundreds of millions. Social credit score in the 99th percentile, postal worker, eh? The man clapped Robert on the shoulder. "Bet you're glad those days are behind you." "Rough work." "My father started as a building superintendent. We all come from humble beginnings." He said it like they shared something, like 35 years of delivering mail in all weather was equivalent to being the son of someone who'd inherited a property empire. Robert nodded, said something appropriately humble, and Maya watched her father make himself smaller to accommodate this man's need to feel magnanimous. A woman in head-to-toe designer clothing, her outfit's price tag scrolling across Maya's implant display like a taunt, engaged Diane in conversation about household management. "Do you have full-time help or just day staff?" The woman seemed genuinely confused when Diane explained that she cleaned her own house, as if the concept of not having domestic employees was a choice people made rather than an economic reality. Maya excused herself, needing distance from watching her parents being diminished by 1,000 small cuts. She moved toward the dessert tables where serving staff were arranging elaborate confections that probably required advanced culinary degrees to produce. She'd always been comfortable in service roles, had spent years helping people, and now she found herself automatically stacking discarded plates, creating order from chaos, staying busy. "Victoria is such a determined girl." Constance Prescott's voice carried across the dessert station, and Maya froze with a stack of plates in her hands. "Blake could have married anyone, and we had hopes, but she's grown on us. Of course, we'll need to smooth some edges. Family background can be overcome with enough effort." "You're a saint for being so open-minded," another woman responded, and Maya recognized the voice as belonging to someone whose social media presence rivaled Victoria's. "Well, Blake loves her." "And really, isn't it very American? The working-class girl marrying up. Like a Hallmark movie." They laughed, and the sound was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Maya's family wasn't a threat or an obstacle. They were a charming anecdote, a minor plot point in Victoria's transformation story, proof that anyone could escape their origins with sufficient determination and the right marriage. Maya set down the plates before she dropped them, before the tremor in her hands became visible. She wanted to leave, wanted to collect her parents and drive back to their neighborhood where buildings didn't reconfigure themselves and people didn't require algorithmic optimization to interact. She wanted to go back to her cottage where Dewey would be waiting, where her books didn't require social credit scores to access, where the value of a thing wasn't measured by its integration with premium networks. "Okay, I'll bite," the voice came from behind her, and Maya turned to find a man she didn't recognize standing close enough that her implant automatically initiated a data exchange. The connection was smooth, which meant his implant was high-end, but the information that flowed through was minimal. He'd configured his privacy settings to reveal almost nothing beyond a name, James Ashford. "You're either staff who got upgraded to a guest, or a guest who's helping staff." He was watching her with what appeared to be genuine curiosity, his expression suggesting he found the situation amusing rather than concerning. "The mystery is killing me," Maya's implant fed her fragments of information. James Ashford. Age 40, connection to the Prescott family unclear, net worth substantial but exact figures obscured by privacy protocols. He was dressed well but not ostentatiously, his clothes expensive in a way that suggested quality rather than display, and he wore a watch that her implant identified as vintage, an actual mechanical timepiece worth more than most people's annual income but chosen for craftsmanship rather than smart features. Option 3, Maya said, her guard automatically rising. Family member being polite. Family? He sat down at the table uninvited, gesturing for her to join him. Blake sighed or. He looked at her more carefully, and something in his expression shifted. "Wait. You're not a Prescott." "Thank God, I'm the bride's sister." Maya remained standing, unsure whether she wanted to engage with this conversation or extract herself before it became another exercise in humiliation. "The one who doesn't photograph well." Something flickered across James's face, recognition, interest, something else she couldn't quite identify. "That's the saddest and most interesting thing anyone's said to me in 6 months." James Ashford, black sheep, disappointing son, and professional party crasher, he extended his hand for a physical handshake, the same gesture her father had offered Blake, and Maya found herself accepting it before she'd consciously decided to engage. "Maya Chen, +1 to my own sister's wedding celebration, library worker, and apparently a distraction. Now I need to hear this story." James was still holding her hand, and Maya realized she hadn't pulled away, realized there was something in the way he looked at her that felt different from every other interaction she'd had at this party. Not assessment or judgment or the careful calculation of social positioning, but actual interest. She sat down, partly because her legs were tired from standing in uncomfortable shoes, partly because something in James's expression suggested he wasn't performing the same social theater everyone else at this party was engaged in. "So, librarian," James said, leaning back in his chair with the kind of casual confidence that came from never having to worry about whether furniture would support you. "Let me guess, everyone at this party has asked if libraries are still relevant in the digital age." Maya laughed before she could stop herself, a genuine sound that felt strange after hours of careful control. "Actually, they've avoided me completely. I think I'm the before picture in Victoria's Cinderella story." Ouch. James's expression turned serious. "Family's complicated. Blake and I technically share a father, but I'm from the first marriage, the one that ended when Dad traded up for Constance. Blake got the country club membership and the family business. I got the valuable life lesson about what money does to people." "Is that why you're the black sheep?" Maya found herself genuinely curious, which was dangerous, because curiosity led to hope and hope led to disappointment. "I'm the black sheep because I left the family investment firm to fund weird passion projects." Their words, not mine. James's smile had an edge to it now. Affordable housing cooperatives, clean water infrastructure in developing countries, small business incubators in underserved communities. Turns out when you use money to actually help people instead of just generating more wealth, families like mine get nervous. "My father hasn't spoken to me in 3 years." Maya's implant was still trying to pull more information about James, but his privacy protocols were sophisticated enough that she was only getting fragments, something about a foundation, multiple international projects, financial assets that exceeded most of the guests at this party but deployed in ways that didn't generate social credit or algorithmic status. My sister hasn't spoken to me in 3 weeks, Maya said quietly. Except to uninvite me from her wedding because I wouldn't apologize for existing wrong. James was watching her with an intensity that made something flutter in Maya's chest, a sensation she hadn't felt in years, not since her ex-boyfriend had systematically dismantled her self-worth while explaining that her life choices were embarrassing to him professionally. Their loss, James said, and the words were simple but his tone made them mean something more. On both counts, the moment stretched between them, charged with something Maya couldn't quite name. Around them, the party continued, music playing, conversations flowing, wealth and status performing their elaborate dance, but at this table, something different was happening. So what do you do at this library that doesn't photograph well? James asked, and his voice had shifted to something softer, more genuine. I help people. Maya heard herself talking, the words coming faster than she'd intended. Immigrants learning English through AI-assisted programs that the city won't fund properly. Seniors learning to navigate technology interfaces that weren't designed for them. Kids who need a safe place after school because their parents are working multiple jobs just to keep their housing current. People who fall through every other social safety net we're supposed to have. It's not glamorous, and it definitely doesn't generate social credit or optimize anyone's personal brand, but it's essential, James interrupted. Important. Real. Maya met his eyes, and something passed between them that felt like recognition. Yeah. Real. You're the only person here who hasn't tried to pitch me a cryptocurrency scheme or complain about yacht maintenance costs. James was smiling now. And it was a genuine expression that reached his eyes, completely different from Blake's performative charm. Please tell me you're not actually related to the Prescotts. Guilty. I'm the sister they'd prefer stayed in the prologue. James leaned forward, and Maya was suddenly very aware of how close he was, how his attention felt like something physical, something that made her skin warm and her pulse quicken. I like prologues. That's where all the good foreshadowing happens, and where the underestimated characters get introduced, Maya said, surprising herself with her own boldness. Before they change everything. What do you do? James asked, his voice lower now, intimate in a way that made the crowded party feel suddenly distant. When you're not being criminally underestimated, I'm a librarian. I help people find what they're actually looking for, which is almost never what they asked for. James's laugh was genuine, delighted. That might be the sexiest job description I've ever heard. The air between them felt charged, electric, and Maya was trying to remember the last time someone had looked at her like this, like she was interesting and valuable and worth paying attention to, when Constance Prescott's voice cut through the moment like a blade. James. There you are. Constance materialized beside their table, her expression carefully neutral in a way that suggested displeasure. I see you've met Victoria's sister. Maya, was it? How cozy you two look. Maya was just telling me about her work, James said, not moving away, not adjusting his body language to accommodate Constance's obvious disapproval. Fascinating stuff. Oh, how noble. Constance's smile was sharp. Public service. James, you're always collecting charity cases, it's very you. Maya, dear, do you work at the university library? Maya kept her voice steady, refusing to let Constance see how the words landed. Public library. The Lincoln branch downtown, how sweet. Constance's tone suggested she was discussing a child's lemonade stand. Blake was just saying they're shutting that location down. Budget cuts, I believe? Such a shame. The words hit like physical blows, and Maya felt the careful control she'd maintained all afternoon beginning to fracture. They were closing Lincoln Branch. The building she'd poured her life into, the community she'd built, the people who depended on her programs, all of it scheduled for demolition, and she was hearing about it at her sister's garden party from Blake Prescott's mother. James had gone very still beside her. Lincoln Branch. That's the Carnegie building with the original stained glass, isn't it? Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. Was. They're giving us 6 months, Blake joined them, moving with the loose confidence of someone who'd been drinking expensive champagne for several hours. He was accompanied by several of his friends, and Maya's implant automatically cataloged them: tech executives, venture capitalists, people whose decisions shaped markets and destroyed communities without ever having to witness the consequences. "Yeah, cities selling that whole block to developers," Blake said, loud enough that conversations around them paused. "Should have happened years ago. Prime real estate wasted on, no offense Maya, books nobody reads anymore. My buddy Marcus is heading up the development group. Mixed-use high-end condos, boutique retail space. Gonna completely revitalize that neighborhood." "Revitalize," Maya repeated, and the word tasted like ash in her mouth. "By pushing out the families who actually live there," Blake laughed, and several of his friends joined in. "That's called economic development, Maya. You can't stop progress because some people want free Wi-Fi and story time. The market has spoken, that location generates more value as residential units than as a public service facility. It's just economics." Constance nodded approvingly. "Blake's right. These old buildings served their purpose, but times change. Perhaps you could find work at one of the suburban branches? I'm sure they need staff in the nicer areas." The group around them had grown larger, and Maya could see her parents at the edge of the crowd, their faces worried. And Victoria hovering nearby looking pale and anxious. Maya felt the walls closing in, felt the familiar sensation of being made small, of having her life's work dismissed as quaint and obsolete by people who measured value only in profit margins and social credit scores. "Funny thing," James said, his voice cutting through the condescension with precision. "A property developer came to me 3 weeks ago wanting funding for that exact project. Marcus Brennan, right? I turned him down." The conversation stopped. Blake's smile faltered, and his friends exchanged glances that Maya's implant registered as confusion and recalculation. "You what?" Blake's voice had lost its performative certainty. His pitch deck was impressive, James continued, addressing the growing crowd with the kind of authority that came from actual power rather than inherited status. "Beautiful renderings, solid ROI projections, all the algorithmic optimization you could want. But the social impact analysis was garbage. Displacing 100 low-income families and a functioning community hub for 20 luxury units? The math doesn't work if you factor in actual human cost." "Which I do." Constance's expression had frozen into something brittle. "How very idealistic of you." James ignored her, turning back to Maya, and his expression was intense in a way that made Maya's breath catch. "But I'm curious, if someone were to, say, acquire that building and restore it instead of demolishing it, what would you do with a fully funded, renovated Carnegie Library?" Maya understood what was happening. This was a test, an opportunity, a chance to either shrink back into safety or claim space she'd never been offered before. She met James's eyes and made her choice. "I'd create the city's first combined library community center," she said, her voice steady and growing stronger with each word. "Main floor stays library, expanded collection, modernized technology, but preserving the original architecture. Second floor becomes multipurpose space, free ESL classes, tech literacy programs for seniors, meeting rooms for local nonprofits. The basement gets converted from storage into after-school programming space. Homework help, mentorship, college prep support for first-generation students." She was aware of the crowd listening now, aware of her parents watching with something like hope, aware of Victoria's stricken expression, but mostly she was aware of James, watching her with absolute attention. "We'd partner with the community college for adult education programs," Maya continued, letting years of frustrated planning pour out. "Set up a small business resource center for local entrepreneurs who can't afford premium consulting services. Create a recording studio for local artists. The building could serve 10,000 people annually instead of becoming luxury condos that no one in the neighborhood can afford. It would become what Carnegie libraries were supposed to be: community anchors, equalizers, proof that education and culture don't belong only to people who can pay subscription fees." The garden party had gone quiet, and Maya realized she was standing now, though she didn't remember getting up, and James was standing too, his phone already in his hand, and if that same someone wanted to endow it, say, $5 million for programming and operations. Maya's heart was pounding, but she didn't let herself retreat. I'd name the children's wing after their grandmother and make sure every kid who walked through those doors knew someone believed their education mattered more than profit margins. I'd hire community members to staff it, people who know the neighborhood, who speak the languages, who understand what's actually needed. And I'd make damn sure that when rich developers come looking again in 20 years, there are enough legal protections and community ownership structures in place that they can't touch it. James was typing rapidly on his phone, and when he looked up, his smile was sharp and satisfied. I'm texting my foundation director right now. Let's have breakfast Monday, you, me, and the building developer I'm about to make a very different offer to. He looked past Maya to Blake and Constance, and his expression held something that might have been satisfaction or might have been vindication. Family's about legacy, right? I think I just found mine. The morning light filtered through Maya's cottage windows like an accusation. She'd been awake since 4, staring at her phone as notifications multiplied, messages, tags, comments spreading across the city's digital landscape like wildfire. The video from Victoria's party had jumped from society feeds to local news sites overnight. Someone had edited it down to 90 seconds. James's speech about meaningful work, the camera catching the way he looked at her when he said it, Maya's face as she processed his words before walking away. The comments section was a battlefield. She made coffee because her hands needed something to do. The cottage's kitchen was barely larger than a closet, counters cluttered with library books and research papers, but it was hers. No smart appliances monitoring her consumption habits, no ambient intelligence adjusting lighting based on her mood metrics. Just an old drip coffee maker that her grandmother had used, the kind you had to measure and time yourself. The ritual steadied her, her phone buzzed. James, 6 minutes ago, coffee? Need to debrief yesterday before my foundation team arrives. Also can't stop thinking about you. Mostly the second thing. Maya's thumb hovered over the message. She'd spent 12 years building walls, perfecting the art of keeping people at arm's length where they couldn't tell her she was wasting her potential or ask when she'd get a real job or wonder why she couldn't be more like Victoria. James had walked straight through those walls like they were paper, and the worst part was how much she'd wanted him to. She typed back, Rosie's Diner, 8 a.m. Bring your checkbook and realistic expectations. His response came in seconds, I'll bring both. Wear something that won't distract me from saving your library. She deleted 3 responses before settling on, no promises. The diner occupied a corner lot 3 blocks from Lincoln Branch. The kind of establishment that predated the neighborhood's gentrification and refused to evolve. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, laminated menus offering the same breakfast specials they'd served for 40 years, waitresses who called everyone hon and kept coffee cups full without asking. Maya's regulars ate here, the construction workers who came to the library for resume help, the elderly women from the literacy program, the teenagers who needed somewhere safe and cheap to exist. She'd defended this place at community board meetings when developers wanted to bulldoze it for luxury condos. James was already in a booth when she arrived, looking criminally good in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. No suit, no watch that broadcast his net worth to everyone in range, no augmented reality contact lenses feeding him social metrics. He'd powered down for this, she realized. Made himself as analog as possible in her world. You came, he said, standing as she approached. Old-fashioned manners that shouldn't have affected her but did. I'm curious about your angle. Maya slid into the booth across from him, keeping the table between them like a neutral zone. Rich guys don't usually crusade for underfunded public services. Maybe I'm not usual. He signaled the waitress, who arrived with coffee and knowing looks. James ordered eggs and toast, Maya her regular oatmeal, and then they were alone with the morning light streaming through windows that hadn't been cleaned in a decade. James pulled out an actual paper notebook, which surprised her. No tablet, no smart device recording everything for later analysis. Just paper and a pen that looked expensive but functioned like any other. Full disclosure, he said, I didn't sleep much last night. Kept thinking about that library, your vision for it, and how to make it happen fast enough that the city can't sell it out from under us. Maya wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. This project isn't sexy, it's complicated and political, and there won't be any magazine features or ribbon-cutting photo ops that make you look good. The developer is Marcus Brennan, Blake's college roommate and biggest investor. Saving Lincoln Branch means going to war with your future brother-in-law's financial empire. James held her gaze. His eyes were gray this morning, storm-colored and serious. 3 reasons. 1. It's the right thing to do, and I have the money to do it. 2. Watching you talk about your work yesterday, your passion, your clarity, your refusal to be small, reminded me why I started my foundation in the first place. Before it became about tax benefits and networking and optimizing my public profile. You reminded me what actual purpose looks like. He reached across the table, fingers brushing hers where they gripped the mug. The contact sent electricity up her arm. And 3? Her voice came out softer than intended. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you walked away from me yesterday. The way you handled my family's judgment, the way you stood up for yourself, the way you light up talking about helping people, Maya, you're extraordinary. And I'd like to get to know you better while we save your library. If you're interested. The waitress arrived with their food, breaking the moment. Maya pulled her hands back, needing the distance to think clearly. This was dangerous territory. She'd spent years watching her sister collect men like trophies, measuring their worth in investment portfolios and social capital. Maya had gone the opposite direction, dating adjunct professors and nonprofit workers. Men who valued the right things but always ended up resenting her dedication, wanting her to be less intense, more available, easier to manage. I'm not good at this, she said finally, stirring her oatmeal without eating it. Dating, romance, the whole thing. I always choose wrong, guys who want to fix me or change me or mold me into someone more acceptable. Someone who'd make sense at parties like yesterday's. James cut his eggs with deliberate precision. I don't want to fix you. I want to watch you burn the world down and rebuild it better. And maybe buy you dinner afterward. The laugh escaped before she could stop it, surprised and genuine. That's a hell of a sales pitch. It's not a pitch. It's a statement of intent. He set down his fork, giving her his complete attention. Look, I know what everyone saw yesterday. The tech billionaire rescuing the underdog librarian, very knight in shining armor, very predictable narrative. But that's not what happened. You weren't waiting for rescue. You were about to stage a guerrilla campaign against City Hall, probably with community organizing and media pressure and whatever other tools you've been planning to deploy. I'm just offering to add money and legal resources to your arsenal, and the rest of it? Maya asked. The looking at me like that, the speech about meaningful work, the rest of it is me being honest about what I want. Which is you, if you're interested. But the library comes first. Business before pleasure, Scout's honor. He was smiling now, relaxed and genuine, and Maya felt something in her chest loosen. Maybe this was different. Maybe he was different. Or maybe she was just tired of being alone, tired of pretending she didn't want someone to see her and choose her anyway. Okay, she said. Business first, then we'll see about the rest. Deal. James extended his hand across the table, formal and ridiculous. Maya shook it, but when she tried to pull away, he held on, thumb stroking across her knuckles. The gesture was intimate and deliberate, and Maya's breath caught. Then he released her and picked up his pen like nothing had happened. Let's talk strategy. They spent the next hour mapping out the campaign. James's foundation would make a formal offer to the city, purchase the Lincoln Branch building for its appraised value of $2.5 million, plus commit $5 million for renovations and $3 million for a 10-year operational endowment. In exchange, the building would receive historic landmark status and be legally bound to remain a public library and community center in perpetuity. Marcus Brennan won't accept this lying down, Maya said. He's been planning his luxury development for 2 years. Blake has half his personal wealth tied up in it. They'll fight back with everything they have. Good. James made another note. I've been too polite lately. Could use a real fight. Maya studied him across the table. You understand what you're signing up for? Blake will make this personal. Victoria will be caught in the middle, and she'll blame me. My parents will. She stopped, realizing she didn't actually know what her parents would do. Support Victoria's fiancé, probably. Ask Maya why she always had to complicate things. I understand, James said quietly. I'm not worried about Blake. I have better lawyers and deeper pockets, and more importantly, I have something he doesn't. What's that, you? He closed the notebook. You've been building community support for years. Every person who learned to read at your library, every kid who did homework there after school, every immigrant who used your computers to apply for citizenship, they're all going to show up for you. Blake has money and connections, but you have people. And people are louder than money when they're organized. Maya felt something shift in her chest. He understood. Actually understood, not in the patronizing way people usually did when they talked about the important work she was doing. James saw the strategy, the power dynamics, the long game. I need to make some calls, she said. Rally the community, prep them for city council meetings. We'll need testimonials, media coverage, a social media campaign, already on it. James pulled out his phone, showing her a professional-looking website. SaveLincolnLibrary.org, complete with a petition, donation page, and timeline of upcoming council meetings. My team built this last night. It's ready to launch whenever you give the word. Maya stared at the screen. You made this before you even knew if I'd meet you for coffee. I was optimistic. His smile was crooked and slightly sheepish. Also, I really wanted to see you again. The moment stretched between them, charged and uncertain. Then James leaned across the table, slow enough that Maya could pull away if she wanted, and kissed her. It was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But Maya's hand came up to cup his jaw, and then it deepened, coffee-flavored and promising and real. When they broke apart, Maya's heart was racing and James looked slightly stunned. Okay, he breathed. That was worth the wait, Maya laughed, flushed and off balance. You waited 12 hours, longest 12 hours of my life. He kissed her again, briefer this time, then forced himself to sit back. Right. Business first. I'm going to call my lawyers. Set up the purchase offer. You coordinate the community response. We'll meet tomorrow to compare notes. Tomorrow, Maya agreed, standing on shaky legs. Same time, same place, it's a date. The next 2 weeks turned into controlled chaos. James's foundation submitted their offer to the city with extensive documentation and legal guarantees. Marcus Brennan immediately countered with a higher bid and started working his political connections, calling in favors from council members and the mayor's office. But Maya's community campaign was relentless. She organized packed city council meetings where residents testified about what Lincoln Branch meant to them. Mrs. Chen, who'd learned English in Maya's literacy classes, brought 3 generations of her family to explain how the library had changed their lives. Teenagers from the after-school program presented data on how library access correlated with improved grades and college acceptance rates. Construction workers in their union shirts talked about using library computers to file unemployment benefits during the pandemic, how Maya had stayed late to help them navigate the system. The local news picked it up, sending reporters to interview families camped out in the library's reading room, treating it like an occupation. Maya gave calm, articulate interviews about public resources and community investment while footage showed children doing homework and elderly patrons playing chess. James used his foundation's platform and his personal social media following to amplify everything, turning Save Lincoln Library into a trending topic across the city's digital landscape. Blake was furious. Maya heard it secondhand through Victoria's increasingly frantic messages, calls she let go to voicemail, texts she read but didn't answer. Her sister was caught in an impossible position, loyalty to her fiancé versus loyalty to Maya, money versus meaning, the life she'd chosen versus the sister who'd always complicated everything. Maya almost felt bad. Almost, she and James fell into a rhythm. Morning meetings at Rosie's diner to strategize, afternoon calls comparing notes as they navigated bureaucracy and public pressure. Late dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants in Maya's neighborhood where James looked increasingly comfortable and increasingly besotted. They talked for hours, about his divorce 5 years ago, how his ex-wife had wanted the country club life while he wanted meaning, how he'd spent the last decade trying to use his money in ways that mattered but kept getting pulled into the performative philanthropy circuit. About Maya's grandmother who'd raised her, taught her that service was the highest calling, worked 3 jobs to put Maya through college while Victoria got their parents' financial support for business school. "You carry a lot of anger," James observed one night over Ethiopian food, watching Maya tear injera with efficient movements. "About your family, about how they see you, wouldn't you?" Maya met his eyes. "I spent my entire childhood being compared to Victoria and found lacking. Not ambitious enough, not polished enough, not interested in the right things. And then I built this whole life, important work, community impact, actual meaning, and they still see me as the disappointing daughter who couldn't cut it in the real world, their loss." James reached across the table, threading his fingers through hers. "You're magnificent. Revolutionary, even. You're changing people's lives while they're just accumulating capital. Tell that to my mother when she asks why I'm not married yet. Introduce me. I'll explain that you've been holding out for someone who appreciates genius when he sees it." Maya laughed despite herself. "Careful. That sounds like you're planning to stick around." "I am." His thumb stroked across her knuckles, the gesture familiar now. "If you'll let me." They kissed in the restaurant's dim light, and Maya let herself believe it might actually work this time. The city council vote was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Maya arrived early, wearing professional clothes that felt like armor, tailored pants and a blazer that she'd borrowed from a friend because her own wardrobe consisted entirely of cardigans and jeans. James was already there in a suit, flanked by lawyers and foundation staff, looking every inch the wealthy philanthropist ready to do battle. The gallery was packed. Lincoln Branch supporters filled half the room, families with handmade signs, teenagers filming everything for social media, elderly patrons who dressed in their finest clothes to testify. The other half belonged to Marcus Brennan and his development company, men in expensive suits, lobbyists whispering to council members, Blake sitting in the front row looking grim. Maya spotted her parents in the middle section, neutral territory. Her mother caught her eye and nodded, expression unreadable. Victoria was conspicuously absent. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Brennan's team presented their case first: job creation, increased property values, tax revenue projections rendered in slick infographics and projected onto screens. They made Maya's library sound like a relic, a drain on city resources, an obstacle to progress. Council members who'd clearly been lobbied asked pointed questions about whether public libraries were even relevant anymore when everyone had smartphones and internet access. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood at the microphone, no notes, no presentation, just the truth she'd been carrying for 12 years. "Lincoln Branch Library serves 853 families every month," she said. Her voice carried across the chamber. Steady and clear. "Not users. Families. When we say Mrs. Chin uses our literacy program, we mean her, her 2 daughters, her 5 grandchildren, and the teenage nephew who stays with her after his parents were deported. When we say the Rogers family depends on our after-school program, we mean 4 kids with a single mother working 2 jobs who literally cannot afford childcare and would have nowhere safe to go between 3 and 6:30 every weekday. When we say Mr. Hassan uses our computers to run his business, we mean the food truck that employs 6 people and just won a small business award from the mayor's office." She moved away from the microphone, forcing council members to actually look at her instead of their phones and tablets. "You want to talk about relevance? About return on investment? Calculate what it costs the city when children don't learn to read. When teenagers have nowhere safe to exist. When immigrants can't access the resources they need to build lives here. Calculate what it costs in emergency room visits, in incarceration, in welfare programs and social services. Then tell me whether a library is a good investment." The gallery erupted in applause. The council president gavelled for order, but Maya saw the shift in the room. Several council members were sitting forward now, paying actual attention. James testified next, offering the foundation's proposal in clinical detail, dollar amounts, renovation plans, operational endowments, legal guarantees. His lawyers presented documentation proving everything was legitimate and binding. The message was clear: we're serious, we're funded, we're not going away. The vote came at 9:30. 5-4 in favor of James's foundation purchasing Lincoln Branch with historic preservation status. Marcus Brennan's development was dead. Maya stood in the council chamber as people celebrated around her, feeling strangely hollow. They'd won. She should be elated. Instead, she felt exhausted and slightly numb, aware that the victory had come at a cost she hadn't fully calculated yet. James found her in the lobby afterward, pulling her into a tight hug that felt like relief and promise combined. "We did it," he murmured against her hair. "Your library is safe." "Our library," Maya corrected, and felt him smile. They walked out into the night together, past reporters shouting questions and Brennan's team looking furious and Lincoln Branch supporters who wanted to buy them celebratory drinks. Maya's phone was buzzing constantly, messages, calls, notifications, but she ignored it all, needing just a few minutes of quiet to process what had happened. James walked her back to the library itself, 3 blocks from City Hall. The building looked small and shabby in the streetlights. Nowhere near as impressive as the luxury development that might have replaced it. But lights were on inside. Someone had organized an impromptu party, people streaming in with food and music and victory in their voices. "You should go in," James said. "They're celebrating you." Maya looked at the library, then back at James. "Come with me?" His smile was answer enough. They walked inside together, and Maya let herself be pulled into the celebration, accepting hugs and congratulations while James stood slightly to the side, watching her with an expression that made her heart ache in the best way. Her phone rang around midnight. Victoria, finally calling after 2 weeks of silence. Maya stepped outside to answer, leaving the party noise behind. "You won," Victoria said without preamble. Her voice was flat, exhausted. "Blake is furious. Marcus lost millions. The wedding might be off." Maya leaned against the library's brick wall, looking up at stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "I didn't do this to hurt you, I know." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "That's what makes it worse. You actually believe in all this, the library, the community, the meaningful work. It's not a game to you." "It never was." "No," Maya agreed. "It wasn't. I used to think you were wasting your potential. That you were settling because you couldn't compete with me. But watching you fight for this thing you believe in, watching you win," Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "Maybe I'm the one who's been settling. Building a life that looks impressive but feels empty." Maya closed her eyes. This was the conversation they should have had years ago, before resentment calcified into walls between them. It's not too late to want different things. To choose meaning over status, says the woman who just landed a tech billionaire while saving her library. Very convenient timing, Maya, but Victoria's voice held warmth now, not bitterness. "Maybe something like pride." "I didn't land him," Maya said. "We're figuring it out as we go. No guarantees. He looks at you like you hung the moon. Trust me, that one's not going anywhere." They talked for another 20 minutes, tentative and careful but real. When Maya went back inside, James was helping elderly patrons carry food to their cars, sleeves rolled up and completely at home. He caught her eye across the room and smiled, and Maya felt something in her chest settle into place. This was the revolution, not dramatic or violent or wrapped in grand gestures. Just people choosing to value the right things. Just Maya refusing to be small. Just a library saved and a community protected and a man who saw her completely and chose her anyway. The revolution was quiet and persistent and utterly unstoppable. And for the first time in 12 years, Maya felt like she was exactly where she belonged.